Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. Texas's largest school district, Houston ISD, has lost more than 13,000 students in 2 years after it was taken over by the state. Joining me to tell us more about this is the Center Square's education reporter, Esther Wickham. Esther, despite losing lots of students, they're also improving in other ways. Can you tell us what's going on with this district, like why the state took it over and kind of how that process has gone since then?
Yeah, thanks, Eliana. So the Center Square's contributor Bethany Blankley did a great story on what's happening in Texas and kind of what's going on when it comes to public schools and enrollment. And we've talked a lot about over the past 6 years what has happened with the public school system, school choice, enrollment decline, parents advocating for flexibility. And we'll kind of get into that later on, but just like you said, the largest school district in Texas, Houston Independent School District, has lost many students due to the pandemic, due to school choice and students and parents wanting to go online. But a big portion of that comes after this specific school district was plagued with so much corruption and mismanagement. And a lot of teachers, unfortunately, in this school district that are no longer teachers or even working in that school district were charged with gang crimes and cheating theft schemes. And multiple board members were convicted of bribery, extortion, kickbacks. And so we've really seen in this school district a major decline, not only in funding, not only in school enrollment and test scores, but also just the morality of it all, and teachers, not stepping up to the plate to have that high standard for protecting themselves and protecting their students. And prior to the Texas Education Agency's takeover of this school district, there was a recent attempt to increase taxes by $11 billion, and that failed. And so the school district was kind of slowly plummeting. And prior to the pandemic in 2019, like I said, the Texas Education Agency decided to do an investigation. They saw a lot of sketchy things going on. They're like, what is happening? We have to hold these school board members and these teachers accountable for their misconduct. And they saw that simultaneously with student enrollment and with these test scores declining. And they sought to kind of fix this. And so in 2023, the Texas Education Agency took over the independent school district in Texas and replaced the board as well as all of the teachers that were a part of its corruption, to seek to kind of change the course of the school district, as well as appointing a new superintendent, Mike Miles. And so a new report came out as our reporter Blankley kind of looked into. The University of Houston did a report on how the school district is going since the takeover.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about what it's looked like since that takeover? There's been a continued decline in enrollment. That's still been a problem that they're facing, but there's also some positives. Can you lay those out for us?
Yeah, like I said, the enrollment decline, there are multiple different contributors to that. You can't necessarily say because of the takeover, because of the corruption, or because of this one particular thing. There's a lot of things at play here, but what we saw once the takeover happened is kind of this shift in teachers, in enrollment, and in test scores. And so, first, looking at the enrollment decline, this report by the University of Houston looked at this massive decline of 12% from 2016 school year to 2023. So prior to the takeover by the TEA, there was 12% decrease, which was about 2% each year. They're losing hundreds of thousands of students. And overall, between that time, they lost over 200,000 students in the school district. And looking at kind of currently now from the takeover in 2023 by the Texas Education Agency to, right about now, it's kind of increased. So from 2% each year, it went up to 3.5% each year. And it decreased kind of in larger quantities. And like the title says, 13,000 students were lost within the district. And this is largely due to the COVID lockdown era, right? A lot of students unenrolled or left or, went to homeschooling, charter, what have you. And aside from just the students, we also saw teachers. So aside from the teachers that obviously were put in jail or left that teaching field, more than 500 teachers left the administration when the takeover happened. And this is a big part, which is even a bigger conversation, to the teacher shortage, right? We've seen that increase over the whole country. And a lot of teachers have left, either they've moved or they are in non-teaching roles, just because the public education system is a very difficult place to be a teacher. But we've kind of seen that decline as well. And as that has happened, this Houston independent school district has had to hire more uncertified teachers. And so in the year of the takeover in 2023 to 2024, there was, over 20% of these teachers that were uncertified. The report highlights is not just this city, right? It's kind of statewide. This is statewide data. It's looking at, for the whole state, over 50% of new hires are uncertified statewide. And that doesn't necessarily, mean that these are terrible teachers. It just means that there's a massive teacher shortage and there's definitely a problem. But Eliana, what's really interesting is even with this uptick, like you mentioned, we're seeing test scores absolutely soar. And we have to understand too, when you look at it at a macro level, these test scores are still below average. And they are still, declining over decades and decades of data, and looking at students in the 90s and early 2000s compared to now. And I know we've talked a lot about that with other states, but specifically looking at on a micro level where these students were and the school district was 6, 7, 8 years ago compared to now, this kind of takeover with the new superintendent and with this, the teacher education agency, it's improved its academic metrics. And so, for example, prior to the takeover, this, district was getting Fs when it came to ratings for the schools. Students were barely passing their classes, a low percentage in graduation. And since the takeover, with Miles in leadership, the number of schools have tripled when it comes to grades of A and B, when looking at the schools and when looking at the ratings for not only the campuses, but also for, student success and academics. So overall, we're really seeing it's kind of interesting. There's a continued decline in enrollment and a continued decline in teachers, but there is a significant increase and a huge turnaround when it comes to the district's success with student academics. And overall, the district has seen a lot of parents express support for this, and they'll continue to request for the state as well as the federal government for funding, because as we kind of continue to see the Department of Education dismantle, public funding for education kind of shift around, that is definitely something that they're concerned about. But aside from all of the hurdles this new takeover and this new point of leadership has faced, students are actually getting a great return on investment, and it looks like they're improving historic margins across the board.
Yeah, I think the numbers are very interesting to see. It says that, 35% of students were attending A or B rated schools, and now 75% are in just 2 years. And similarly, interesting number going from 45% that were at D or F rated schools, and now only 7% are at D rated schools with no F rated schools. So that just kind of shows the shift in those numbers quite a bit. Um, well, Esther, thank you for laying out this story for us. You can follow this story and more stories like it at thecentersquare.com.